It is Remembrance Sunday, and so to open, I would like to say you can do whatever it is that you need to do in this space this morning in order to look after yourself. If you want to get up and move around, if you want to head outside for some fresh air, if you need to find someone to pray with, please just do whatever it is that is going to help you to encounter the peace of Jesus this morning. And because it is Remembrance Sunday, I always want to talk about hope. And I also want to be honest about how hard life and faith can sometimes be. You see, for all of us at some point or another, we will experience what it feels like to know the absence of God. And so today I'd like to spend just a short while exploring what the Bible teaches us about finding hope when heaven feels silent. Today we remember the darkness of war and the pain of loss and the long silences that follow. But we also remember that darkness doesn't win. Zephaniah once wrote to the people who knew this kind of darkness, reminding them that even when the world felt broken, God was still God. And in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 17, he writes, "The Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing." I wonder if, like me, sometimes your prayer life operates a little bit less like a conversation and a little bit more like a vending machine. I put in my request, I press the right buttons, and out pops what I have ordered. But sometimes, instead of getting the thing that we've requested, sometimes God's voice seems silent. In The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, he writes a story of Diggory, a boy whose mother is dying. And when Diggory first encounters the lion Aslan, he gathers all his courage and he asks, "Please will you give me some magic fruit of this country to make my mother well?" It is a desperate request, and Lewis writes on, he had been desperately hoping that the lion would say yes. He had been horribly afraid that it might say no, but he was taken aback when it did neither. "But please, please, won't you?" Up until then, he had been looking at the lion's great feet and the huge claws on them. But now, in despair, he looked up at its face. What he saw surprised him as much as anything in his whole life, for the tawny face was bent near his own, and great shining tears stood in the lion's eyes. They were such big, bright tears compared with Diggory's own that for a moment he felt as if the lion must really be sorrier about his mother than he was himself. This is a moment where, for Diggory, everything has changed. The problem isn't fixed, but Diggory realizes that the lion is weeping too. And that's the first point of hope for us this morning, that God may not always fix what we ask in the way that we want, but he never stops feeling what we feel. He is not absent from our pain. He knows it deeply. And if this is where you are this morning, you might ask, but what use is a suffering God when what I want is a God who can take away my suffering? And yet, it is this very God, the one who weeps with us, the one who stays through the silence, who shows us what love really looks like. I've read a book this week called God on Mute by Pete Greig. You may have read it. If you haven't, I'd recommend it. And in this book, Pete Greig says that this silence, this aching, this space that feels like absence and aloneness does not mean that God is gone. In fact, it is often in this exact space where faith grows roots. We have recently, as a family, discovered the skate park. And contrary to popular opinion, I am not really all that skater boy as a person. And so spending time at the skate park is, for me, unfathomably uncomfortable as a space. Justin absolutely loves it. Zero shame learning all the flippy tricks. And Rupert is off. He is made of brave, that boy. I don't know where he gets it from. He absolutely loves it. We were there yesterday, and it got me thinking about how we learn these ridiculously terrifying skills. You've got BMXs flying overhead and people doing all the tricks and kids crashing all over the place. And yet they don't crash. How do they do it? I think it's marvelous. There are stages to learning to do the big, scary things. And if I think about when I learned to ride my bike, I remember my granny taught me to ride my bike, and I started with the stabilizers on, and then you take the stabilizers off, and then they hold the seat and balance you as you go along, and then eventually they let go and run along beside you or wait and release you. I remember that moment of Granny letting go of my bike seat. And she was no less there than she had been all along, but she had taught me in such a way that my faith and skill had grown to the point where she could release me into it. And faith, life can feel a little bit like that. It can feel wobbly, it can feel unstable or scary, and sometimes we fall. But God is still right there where he's always been, cheering us on. And so when God seems silent, it is never punishment. It is invitation. It is an invitation to trust him differently. Because sometimes in the silence, his love is closer than it might sound. Sometimes God takes the stabilizers off our bike of faith, not to abandon us, but to release us into the ride. Pete Greig, again, describes the moment in Gethsemane where Jesus prays, and he writes this: "No wonder Jesus cried, 'Father, take this cup from me.' Surely, on hearing the cry, there are tears in the Father's eyes, and his hand moves immediately to do just that. Yet, and on that single word from Jesus, I imagine the Father's hand pauses by the cup. Heaven falls silent in suspense while hell jeers, drooling with lust for blood and power, too stupid to understand its own undoing. Yet not my will." And perhaps the screams of delight in hell were so loud when they heard these 4 words from the lips of the one whose will had tormented them for so long, that they never even heard the final 5 words at all. But your will be done. You see, in that quiet act of surrender, love was already undoing the darkness. Even when heaven was silent, even when it looked like all hope was lost, darkness didn't win. Love did. The silence might feel like defeat, but it's often where God is doing his deepest, greatest work. We are not defeated because we feel defeated any more than we are only saved if we feel saved. The missionary Hudson Taylor, who spent years in China and knew both incredible miracles and crushing loss, wrote this during a season of exhaustion and despair. He wrote, "I cannot read, I cannot think, I cannot even pray, but I can trust." He'd reached a point where faith wasn't about feeling strong or finding the right words. It was only about clinging to God. The Lord your God is with you. And sometimes the way he is with us isn't in noise or voice or answers, but instead in the quiet. The Lord your God is with you. And in the very next breath, Zephaniah writes, he will quiet you with his love. And that word quiet can mean 2 things. It can mean that God calms us, or it can mean that God himself falls silent, so moved with his love that he is lost for words. And sometimes love sounds like quiet. It's not always going to be the thunderclap or the clear answer. Sometimes it is the stillness that holds you when everything else shakes. And maybe you've known that. Maybe you've known that when words run out and prayer feels empty, and yet somehow you still feel held. That is God quieting you with his love. Sometimes we think silence means that God is not there, but what if it's actually the complete opposite? And there's a picture that I find particularly helpful in thinking about this. I've probably talked about it before because it's something I come back to all the time in my own being and in my own life. In the Jewish tradition, the name God, Yahweh, what we would see as YHWH, is considered so holy that it is not ever spoken aloud. But some rabbis point out that the letters themselves, Yod, He, Vav, He, sound like the rhythm of breathing. Inhale, exhale. Yahweh. It's as if our very breath is speaking his name, even when we have no words left. There is a reason that a few deep breaths can still your heart and focus your mind and quiet your soul. Because your breath, whether you know it or not, recognizes its creator. It sings out in worship, calling on his name day and night. Consciously or subconsciously, your very breath speaks the name of the Lord. And so when you can't pray and when you can't find the words for faith, you can let your breath be your prayer. Inhale and exhale every time, a quiet reminder that he is here and he is God. He is the breath in our silence. He is the life that exists within our waiting, and he is the love that quiets and holds us still. Mother Teresa, a woman renowned for her faith and her visions and her knowledge and love of God, she had one single year of vivid visions of Jesus, and she spent almost 50 years following that in what she called the darkness. She felt nothing, she heard nothing, and yet she still chose every day to love and serve her God. Because even in that silence, God was present. And so maybe that's what Zephaniah means, that sometimes the deepest love doesn't shout, it simply stays. And if you're wondering how to find hope when heaven feels silent, you can start here. The Bible is not a record of things that God used to say. It is the place where he is always and ever speaking to you. Every story, every promise, every page whispers his presence to us. So when prayers run dry and when heaven feels quiet, you can open the Bible because the God who seems silent is already speaking there. And maybe that is how this hush becomes a song. When we open his word and realize that he has been speaking to us all along. The Lord is with you. He will quiet you with his love and rejoice over you with singing. We come now to episode 2 of What Happened at Beth and Justin's Wedding. Justin not only gave a lovely wedding speech when I eventually got there, but he also did this.
You can light a fire with your eyes across the room. And everybody I know just loves to be with you. The warmth your heart gives off could melt the North Pole. And I'm so lucky that you love me, whoa. And you're so creative, it always makes me smile. And you keep yourself entertained in such good style. And the kitchen takes a hit, and I can deal with it. And I'm so lucky that you love me, whoa. Bethany, don't go and sew your fingers together, yeah. Bethany, don't go and sew your fingers together, yeah.
That's enough. chorus makes zero sense out of context. I sewed our wedding invitation, so that was what was happening there. I was endlessly trying to not sew my fingers together, and that's where the chorus came from. Justin was a man smitten to a T, and he could not help but put his love into a song, because it's just better with music, as is so much of life. He sings his love. And Zephaniah in this verse paints a stunning picture of God's heart. This word rejoice, yasis, literally means, and I love this, to spin around with joy. I love that so much, the image of God so in love with you, spinning around like a child in dizziness and laughter, in delight over you. This isn't a polite smile or a nod of approval. It is dancing with joy, kind of love. And in the Hebrew, the joy here in this part of the verse and the silence that we've just heard, they dance back and forth in the writing. God rejoices, and then he grows still, and then he rejoices again. And so in this one breath, he is both singing and spinning, and the next he is silent in awe. And both of these are love. We may not always hear God's voice clearly, not audibly and not on demand, but we can know that he holds us in the quiet, like a parent holding a baby in the darkness and the quiet of night. We can trust that the same God who rejoices over us with singing still does so in the dark. His song of delight doesn't depend on your daylight. He is with you, and he sings over you when you can't hear his voice. God sings over us, and something in us is built to want to sing back, just as we have already been doing this morning, because worship reminds our souls of what our hearts forget. That sometimes we sing not because we feel full of faith, but because today we are choosing it. The psalmist says, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Put your hope in God, for I will praise him." And that's what sung worship does. It commands your soul to remember, to hope, and to trust again. And even when we can't hear God's voice clearly, we can still raise our own. And often that is where hope starts to rise. Hope doesn't mean pretending that everything is fine. Hope means believing that this is not the end of the story. Hope means that even in the silence and the darkness, as well as in the singing and celebration, something sacred is happening. Romans 8:38 says, "I am convinced that neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither the present nor the future, nor any powers, neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation can separate us from the love of God." And that is why darkness doesn't win, because love never lets go. Darkness did not win in Gethsemane. It did not win at the cross. It did not win when the enemy threw all he had at Jesus, and eternity's suffering, the consequences for every human sin. And yet Jesus took it all. He endured it all. He suffered it all, and he defeated it all. He has promised us that darkness does not win, love does. Love that quiets you and holds you. Love that rejoices over you with spinning around and dancing. Love that is in awe of you. Love that conquers all your fear and all your grief and all your loss and all your valleys. That love wins. And so today, as we keep silence, remembering those who gave their lives for us, but our silence isn't empty, it is full. It is full of gratitude and of longing and of love. And I wonder if God's silence is not exactly like that too. Not empty, but full of compassion, full of promise, full of purpose, full of love that is deeper than words. So when heaven feels silent, we remember the Lord your God is with you. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. darkness doesn't win, but love does. Amen.